The staff editors at Gold Derby have covered the top 6 categories for the Oscars quite extensively, but even if you nail those categories, you will get an Oscar prediction score of about 25%. So we're here to cover the rest, and we're going to start with Best Cinematography. I'm joined by Tony, Jeffrey, and Zach. And with this category, I see there being 4 locks, I would say. There's Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, The Shape of Water, and Darkest Hour. And first, does anybody not have those 4?
I have them.
Yeah, I've got all 4 of those as well.
I do too.
All right, so what do you have in 5th, Tony?
Right now, I have Mudbound for kind of selfish reasons, not only because I really love everything about that movie, but Rachel Morrison got in at the ASC at their awards, and in this year when the issue of women in positions of power in Hollywood is such a main topic, how awesome would it be to have a woman get into a below the line category that really women don't get into? So that would make me, that's one of those nominations that if that ends up happening, I'll do a cartwheel.
And how do you feel, Zach? What do you have in 5th? You have the same one?
I do have the same one. And I mean, it's actually the only below the line category. In fact, the only category that a woman has never been nominated in. So the optics of that would look really good. I think that if there is a potential spoiler that can unseat it, I guess it's either going to be 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, or Call Me by Your Name. But I think it looks good for Mudbound. The only thing that kind of worries me is the Netflix factor of it all.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, how do you feel? Are there actually 5 locks in this category?
Well, I have Mudbound taking the 5th slot. Again, the whole discussion of, female empowerment and, of course, Rachel Morrison potentially making history as the first woman ever nominated for cinematography. And not to mention, she did recently appear as a guest on Scott Feinberg's Awards Chatter podcast for The Hollywood Reporter. She interviewed her first before interviewing Christopher Plummer. And yes, I say, well, maybe not a lock. I mean, I guess to what Zach said, there is the Netflix factor. I mean, I think Mudbound definitely has potential to do better than what Beasts of No Nation did a few years ago. But yeah, I think Mudbound takes the 5th slot. And I do again agree with Zach that I guess a potential spoiler could be Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, I finally caved and added Mudbound too. I had The Post with Janusz Kaminski in there for the longest time, just because he gets nominated, here and there. It is a very classic, cinematography work from him, where people are sitting indoors and then there's all this light coming through the window for some reason. I'm concerned about Mudbound because, it is a period piece. It should be showing up in other categories like costume design, production design, and I feel like we don't think it's a factor for those ones at all. And then, of course, ASC nominated it because they have so many television people voting, which the Oscars, they're more elitist than that.
I mean, you mentioned Kaminski, and there's also movies shot by Ed Lachman, Wonderstruck, and Vittorio Storaro, Wonder Wheel. And so, I mean, there's always the potential that, they could just default in their nominations and go with one of those old veterans over Rachel Morrison. I mean, it's hard to get your first nomination in a tech category anyway, but it's definitely hard if you're not attached to a movie that's a Best Picture frontrunner. I mean, you think about movies like The Artist and things like that got cinematography nominations for their DPs who were not well known at all, and it was their first nomination. It really helps if you're in the Best Picture frontrunner. So that might be a knock against her as well if Mudbound isn't really expected to show up there.
Yeah, I really
also, if you think about it, is Darkest Hour as safe as we think it is? That's a film that hasn't really overperformed anywhere. In fact, it's vastly, vastly underperformed at a lot of places. Could that film be vulnerable? Or the fact that that's a big period piece, World War II, could that conceivably, just make it safe because of that?
Well, again, I think you have to look at the names of the people who are competing for these categories. Bruno Delbonnel is a 4-time nominee. He even got nominated for a Harry Potter movie. It was The Half-Blood Prince, if I'm not mistaken. So
yeah, I think it was.
yeah, so he's definitely very popular within this branch. So I wouldn't count him out for that reason. But you're right, Tony. I mean, it has underperformed at all the guilds and in other places. But I think if there's one category that it seems fairly safe in, I think it's this one, just because of the man who's behind the camera.
I really wanted the ASC to introduce something like out of left field, like maybe Battle of the Sexes from last year's winner, Lina Sandgren, or they nominated Loveless in their spotlight category, but maybe in the main category it could have been, one of those Asian ones that pops up every so often, or Ida. But yeah, there's no help from them. The Gold Derby odds have Call Me by Your Name actually in 5th, but I feel like that one, there are the Moonlight comparisons, but Moonlight was obviously like a cinematography movie just going off the title. Whereas Call Me by Your Name, it takes place in the summer in Italy, which is nice, but there's not, too much going on beyond that. BAFTA actually nominated 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, which is surprising. And we should take note of, too, because as of last year, BAFTA in the craft categories has switched to a preferential ballot. So it's closer to the Oscars. So, it must have had some passion or, which I think brings us to our next category, which is Best Costume Design. Last year, BAFTA went 5 for 5 for the first time ever. This year, they nominated I, Tonya, so I kind of doubt it. But Zach, what do you have in your top 5?
Well, I mean, the thing to always remember about the costume designers branch is that they often will go their own way, and they will always vote for their heroes. So right now, I'm going with Phantom Thread, Beauty and the Beast, The Shape of Water, and then I'm throwing in Murder on the Orient Express and Darkest Hour.
Yeah, that's very good. I guess let's just share our picks first. Tony, what do you have?
I have those exact 5.
Okay, and Jeffrey?
Well, okay. I actually have the same top 3. I have Phantom Thread, Beauty and the Beast, and Shape of Water. Except my bottom 2, I actually have Greatest Showman and Victoria and Abdul.
Solid, yeah. I've got Beauty and the Beast, Phantom Thread, The Greatest Showman, and then The Shape of Water and Darkest Hour. I actually feel pretty good about The Greatest Showman. It's been doing very well at the box office. It's got, a large theater troupe, which like that, Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus or whatever. And also, its costume designer is this woman named Ellen Moroznik, and she actually won the Career Achievement Award a couple of years ago from the Guild, even though she's never been nominated for an Oscar. But she's been working since the 80s, often in like contemporary stuff like Fatal Attraction and Wall Street and all this kind of stuff. So I think she's well respected, and she's been getting more accolades recently with Behind the Candelabra and The Nick, and this might finally be the one that takes her to the Oscars. I'm very nervous about The Shape of Water and Darkest Hour because, well, first of all, Darkest Hour wasn't even nominated by the Guild, and they have 15 slots.
Well, and that's why I don't have it in my predictions right now.
Yeah. Having said that, the Guild miraculously misses usually 1 per year. I think there have been 2 times when they've ever matched. They've gotten all 5 of them. But, Darkest Hour is not something that has been connecting with the guilds in general. So it seems like it might not have that passion. And then also, okay, yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I was just going to say, all right, I guess I'll go ahead. I was going to say that the reason I put Darkest Hour in there is again, for the same cinematography argument. They vote for people that they like, and Jacqueline Duran, who is the costume designer of both Darkest Hour and Beauty and the Beast, she is a former Oscar winner and a multiple nominee. So that's really, I mean, this is one of those throw a dart at the wall, just take the 15 contenders from the Costume Designers Guild, mix them up a little bit, get rid of all the contemporary contenders, and then just throw in a couple of wild cards. But that's my reasoning for having her in there.
Just to finish what I was saying, the concern I have about Darkest Hour is BAFTA, like every year they nominate, The Imitation Game, The Theory of Everything, Brooklyn, Saving Mr. Banks. Like they love nominating, these kind of mid 20th century British films, and then they don't actually translate to the Oscars all that much. The Oscars are much more about, like, the Victorian era dresses from Victoria and Abdul, which I would love to predict, but where has that film been like this award season? And then, like, in Darkest Hour, I feel like the most memorable costume is just like him wearing the suit, and then he's in Parliament addressing everybody else wearing like a smaller size of the same suit.
Two things I'm sort of looking out for. They're both sci-fi fantasy genre movies. I wonder if this could be a place where they honor Wonder Woman with a nomination, or also Blade Runner. It's not typically the kind of stuff that gets in, but I mean, Mad Max won this award a couple of years ago. So, I mean, who knows? And also, if they want to go with somebody who's never had any kind of recognition whatsoever, but this would be the perfect kind of movie to nominate her. The costume designer of The Beguiled, Stacey Batat. The reason she isn't usually in the running for these sorts of things is that she usually is a designer of contemporary films. And so this is her first real kind of dipping her toes into water with period costumes.
Zach, you're in Hollywood. Can you tell us what happened to The Beguiled? Why? Because, it's in like sixth and like across the board in our predictions, because everybody logged their predictions at the start, and that it just hasn't been showing up anywhere.
I don't know. I mean, it's really weird, because it is the kind of thing where I expected perhaps it could show up in some of the guilds. We didn't talk about it for cinematography, but that's one place that I would have thought maybe Philippe Lassorde, former nominee at both the Oscars and the Guild, could maybe show up. It hasn't shown up in production design or costumes or anywhere. So I'm rather stumped by it. It is ranked pretty high in our odds in a lot of these things. Like, I'm surprised Sofia Coppola is still, I mean, she was in like 7th or 8th place, I think, amongst our best director contenders. But I don't know. I actually do think there's a slight chance. Well, I guess we'll talk about this category later, but I think there is one category it could show up in. So I'll save that.
All right. And Tony, how are you feeling about costumes?
I think Victoria and Abdul, of course, could show up, just simply because by virtue of its being big, British, ornate. But I don't feel like, nothing else. What are they going to put in here instead of the ones we've already mentioned? Are they going to put in something like The Post, which is certainly period, but maybe not as period as is usually necessary to get into this category. And I agree with Zach completely. Something like The Beguiled, or in this category, or even in production design, I find that kind of strange.
We should say Victoria and Abdul and The Post, Victoria Abdul, it's Consolata Boyle, who is a 2-time nominee. And The Post is Anne Roth, who is like maybe the most legendary costume designer alive and working today. So those aren't totally outside the realm of possibility.
Yeah, and where's Sandy Powell in our predictions, right? But she's eligible. Yeah.
That's the thing. You got to always just like, whenever you're doing predictions for these kinds of things, you have to say, okay, what's the Sandy Powell movie this year? What's the Robert Richardson movie this year? It's like all those guys, and say, all right, well, what did they have the best shot of getting in for?
The Shape of Water has been nominated everywhere for its costumes, but it's only 5th in our odds. And I think that's because we all kind of feel it. Like, it's just about, it's about janitors who are wearing these very drab costumes made on, an indie budget. I'm concerned about that one. What about, tell me about Murder on the Orient Express, because I haven't seen that one, but I get the feeling there are just like 12 characters.
Well, again, that's something that's, you have, it's 12 characters, but, one of them is a princess, and, there's all these like very beautiful ornate dresses and fur coats and hats and things like that. And again, Alexandra Burns, she's an Oscar winner. Maybe double check that real quick. But yeah, it's just, I'm really just going off of name recognition alone for those categories. Remember, this is the same branch. Well, the Academy as a whole did this, but this is the category where Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them won last year. So it's not best costume design in a critically acclaimed movie, it's best costume design in a movie. And yes, she is an Oscar winner for Elizabeth the Golden Age of all things.
Yeah, and then last year we have stuff like Allied, also nominated.
Right.
Well, yeah, and a lot of us were predicting. Well, I guess we were kind of split between La La Land and Jackie, and some of us went with Jackie because, well, it did manage to beat La La Land at BAFTA, and of course, we also thought it would probably be a consolation prize for the film not being as strong contender for Natalie Portman as we thought. But of course, Fantastic Beasts came in and surprised us all.
Yep. All right, let's move over to production design, which is kind of similar. We often see a lot of overlap. The Gold Derby odds have The Shape of Water, which won Critics' Choice, as well as Blade Runner, Dunkirk, Darkest Hour, and Beauty and the Beast in the top 5. So, Tony, where do you vary on that?
Go to someone else because I'm having a hard time pulling mine up now.
No worries.
Well, okay, I have those 5 predicted.
Sheep.
I'm sorry?
Sorry, nothing. And Zach, what do you have?
Well, I've got the exact same 5 actually. Tony, just say you have the exact same 5. It'll be okay.
I probably do.
Yeah,
I probably do. It just I can't get to them for some reason. So.
All right. Well, I'll say I don't have Beauty and the Beast because I think that we do see a lot of these fairy tales show up in the costume category. You know, Mirror, Mirror, Cinderella, Snow White and the Huntsman. I'm not sure if they ever show up in production design. And I know that when I was watching Beauty and the Beast, I just thought, like, is that all CGI? So I don't know. That turned me off a little. So I have The Greatest Showman in there.
That's definitely a possibility. And in fact, I should also point out that Maleficent only showed up in costume design, though Into the Woods showed up in costume and production design.
Well, you know what's interesting is that just like it was in the case of Darkest Hour, it's the same production designer on both Beauty and the Beast and Darkest Hour.
And set decorator as well.
Yeah. So, and I mean, you know, former Oscar winners, I wouldn't count them out necessarily, but you're right. I mean, they don't tend to show up here. If there's a spoiler, Greatest Showman, that is a good pick. Also, The Post from Rick Carter. It's not the flashiest production design in the world, but let's not forget that All the President's Men won this category 41 years ago. And he is a 2-time winner as well.
Well, and I should also point out that the production designer on Greatest Showman is the same production designer on Dunkirk, Nathan Crowley.
Yeah, and The Post, the Art Directors Guild is one of the few places that's actually shown up in terms of nominations, so it's got some support there. What else do we have for this category? I mean, last year they nominated Passengers and Hail Caesar, so again, this is not somewhere that you need to be in the Best Picture conversation.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, this could be another place for Murder on the Orient Express. It did get a Critics' Choice nomination over Darkest Hour, of all things. It could also be a place to honor Wonder Woman. You know, speaking of Passengers, there's one movie here that's ranked very high in our odds that I don't think is outside the realm of possibility, and that's Downsizing. You know, it's not a movie that was highly critically acclaimed when it came out, but you know, the production designers might get behind it. You know, it'd be one of the few places that movie could be honored. But again, it's not best production design in a good movie. It's just best production design in a movie.
Well, yeah, tell that to Suicide Squad that won makeup last year.
Right. Yeah.
Oscar-winning Suicide Squad.
Yeah, so if you want to predict Downsizing or Murder on the Orient Express, you can still get those 100-to-1 odds because there are only about 100 people predicting each of them, compared to 4,000 predicting a nomination for The Shape of Water. Okay, so let's move over to editing. And Tony, do you have your nominees?
No, not yet.
All right. It's all good.
I'm having all sorts of technical stuff.
All right, Jeffrey, how about you?
Okay, as of now, I have Dunkirk, The Shape of Water, 3 Billboards, Get Out, and The Post.
Okay. And Zach?
Well, this is a really tough category for me to predict because there's a lot of strong contenders here. So I have different predictions from Jeffrey. I have Dunkirk. I have The Shape of Water. I have Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. I also have I, Tonya and Baby Driver. And my two wild cards are Blade Runner 2049 and Get Out. And honestly, I can see those two getting in there over, I guess, I, Tonya and Baby Driver. The only three I'm really confident on are Dunkirk, Shape of Water, and Three Billboards, only because it's a strong Best Picture player.
I agree.
Yeah.
The reason we should say that since the Best Picture category expanded to more than 5 nominees, there've only been 2 films not nominated for Best Picture, nominated for film editing. That was Girl with the Dragon Tattoo and Star Wars: The Force Awakens.
And Girl with the Dragon Tattoo won.
It did, yes. The reason I'm going with Baby Driver is, again, remember, these are film editors who are voting for these nominees. And I think that they vote for things that they say, oh, well, that must have been really difficult to edit. And the thing you have to say about Baby Driver is it was very difficult to edit, not just to put together these action sequences, but to put them together to the exact tempo and beat of the selected songs. And so I think that film editors are really going to respond to that and throw a nomination behind this movie.
And it did just win the Critics' Choice Award, as did Dunkirk, because that's how they roll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've got those two, and I've got The Shape of Water and Three Billboards, as well as Get Out, but I'm strongly considering I, Tonya. I was just a little disappointed that I, Tonya didn't get a BAFTA nomination, because I tend to think that the BAFTA nominations in this category are edgier, and they also really liked I, Tonya, seeing as they nominated for costumes.
Yeah, that's true. I was surprised it missed there. But I guess if there's going to be one comedy nominee from the Editors Guild, it's going to be either that or Get Out. It's really a toss-up.
Or Three Billboards, because it's in
comedy. Oh, yeah,
there.
that's right. Yeah. I was thinking of what the Hollywood Foreign Press categorized it as.
But if Baby Driver does get nominated, do you think there's a chance it could even win? I mean, this is a category where we have seen, films that, like, for example, The Bourne Ultimatum winning this. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for a film that just has the most editing to win.
Well, absolutely. I think it can win. I'm predicting Dunkirk right now just because I feel like that's going to be an appropriate place to reward that. But you're right. I mean, Baby Driver, I believe, has the most of all the precursor victories in that category of any film, followed closely behind by Dunkirk, I'm guessing. But I believe that it does lead in precursor wins for film editing. In fact, tied Dunkirk for editing. So it is definitely in it to win it.
Yeah, I'm going with Dunkirk for now, just because I feel like Baby Driver didn't quite transcend the action genre the way that Bourne Ultimatum did, but maybe other people feel differently. And of course, this is the editor's branch, which previously snubbed Inception. So who knows if Dunkirk will be nominated at all.
I don't say it. It might not be. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of movies that are vying for 5 spots. And I mean, Jeffrey, I think you mentioned The Post. That's definitely in there. Lady Bird if Lady Bird shows up here, then it's a strong Best Picture player.
Yeah.
Darkest Hour and Call Me by Your Name as well. So, I mean, one movie that I wonder about, I'm not predicting it, but I do kind of wonder if All the Money in the World could show up here.
Oh.
And for one thing, that's Oscar winner Claire Simpson, right? Who edited a cut of the movie, had it finished, and then had to re-edit like half of it in a matter of days. So if you're looking for your where the hell did that come from nomination, I would say it's probably got to be Claire Simpson for All the Money in the World.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add that this is one category where it is important generally that you're in a Best Picture. I mean, you look at the precursors and they normally go for, like the stuff that's more cuts, like, Nightcrawler or Drive and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the Oscars, they tend to nominate, Spotlight and The Descendants and Dallas Buyers Club, just all that kind of stuff. So if Lady Bird or Get Out is winning Best Picture, like it's really important that we see them here.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what we have next. We will go over to makeup, which still has 3 nominees, even though it's actually both makeup and hairstyling. So who do you have for those 3, Zach?
I'm going with what I think are the safe 3, which is Darkest Hour, Wonder, and I, Tonya. Although I'm looking at the 7 shortlisted ones right now, and I'm really tempted to put Bright in there. Just kind of like that Suicide Squad. This is the worst movie of the year.
It's the same director too. So
yeah, it's the same exact director. But I'm just gonna stick with the 3 that I named for right now. And Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I look at that and I think, why am I not predicting it? But I just feel like I, Tonya is coming on really strong lately, and it's going to basically be kind of like Dallas Buyers Club and get close to the same 6 nominations that movie got, which one of them was makeup and hairstyling. And of course, it also takes care of the hairstyling part of that, because you have Margot Robbie and Allison Janney with these outrageous haircuts to make them look just like Tanya and Lavana Harding. So that's what I'm going with.
Yeah, not to mention the scenes of Tanya on ice. Really, really big hair. Very early 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
And there's that part where she was apparently 15 as well.
Right.
That's true.
Margot is just about my age, which is close to 15.
Yeah, with this category, it's tricky because I'd say the usual composition is like 1 Best Picture nominee and 2 monster movies. So I don't know. I'm going with Wonder, which apparently had the best showing at the Bake Off, followed by Darkest Hour and Bright. Even though I feel like those orcs are pretty ugly.
They're hideous.
Well, and the difference between, I think, you make an apt comparison with Bright and Suicide Squad. The difference, I think, is that we don't know how widely seen Bright even is. Whereas at least we knew Suicide Squad was, if not a critical hit, at least a box office hit.
And again, the Netflix thing of it all just kind of, I mean, if they can at least get a nomination here, if nothing else, then it's going to be a victory for them, because they can say, see, we can get your movie's Oscar nominations outside of the documentary category.
Reach for the stars, Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. Bright's gonna be like the flagship Oscar movie for Netflix. Who would have thought it? Like,
yeah.
I don't have I, Tonya because, like you guys mentioned, the hair, but I don't think this branch cares about, or at least in the Bake Off, they don't care about the hair at all. Like, where's American Hustle, getting a nomination? Yeah, it's a tricky one because it all comes down to how the Bake Off went. So we often see, some random Swedish movie in here, or Bad Grandpa.
Right. Yeah, I was wondering where those Swedish people got nominated twice in a row, I remember. And so I was like, well, they don't have a movie in the running this year. I guess that's one prediction I can't make.
Tony,
have you given your predictions for this one?
My predictions are completely frozen, but I do remember that I do have the same 3 as Zach. I had Guardians of the Galaxy for the longest time, and then when I saw, both after I saw I, Tonya, and then when the reaction really started to pick up to that film, that was one of my first switches.
I can't get a good read on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I mean, people obviously didn't like it as much. Sometimes that doesn't matter. Like, we had Star Trek get 1 for the first one, not nominated, and it was nominated again for the third one. I really thought Guardians of the Galaxy would have gotten a Art Directors Guild nomination.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the first Guardians of the Galaxy was nominated in this category a few years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why I kind of look at it and I'm like, why am I not predicting this? But at the same time, I wonder if maybe that movie and Bright could just kind of split votes for the sort of more obvious makeup pick in a so-so movie. I don't know.
Now, what about our other category with the Bake Off, visual effects? Zach, are you predicting Guardians of the Galaxy for that one?
No, I am not. So I'm playing it pretty safe in this one. I'm going with War for the Planet of the Apes, Blade Runner 2049, Dunkirk, The Shape of Water, and I've got Star Wars in there, but the one that I really want to, there's two that I kind of want to put in there, just based on history and what I've heard from the Bake Off. One is Okja.
Mm.
And
that's the one that I have. That's the one that I have instead of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And also from Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. The other one that I'm really tempted to put in there, just based on history of the franchise, is Alien Covenant.
Mm.
I think Alien Resurrection is the only proper Alien film that has not been nominated in this category. Even Prometheus got nominated in it. And the fact that it was able to make the Bake Off makes me kind of look at it and go, I wonder if that could happen.
I have Star Wars. I don't have The Shape of Water. That one was shut out by the Visual Effects Society. But also I just feel like it's one of those ones like Arrival, let's say, that's in the Best Picture conversation, but it doesn't have the effects work of these other ones, let's say. I mean, I saw the movie and it turned out it was just, this guy, this tall man wearing a suit. I expected a lot more, things flying around, that kind of thing.
Well, there's at least some underwater sequences.
It's true, yes. Obviously, all this work is, extremely impressive. And yeah, this category, they really don't like Marvel. So that's an easy one to cross off.
Yeah.
Arrival's a really good comparison to make with The Shape of Water, because that was, it was in the Best Picture conversation. It got every single other tech category it could possibly have gotten, except for, I guess, costume design. And it missed visual effects, which was really weird. So, I mean, I think that you're right. I mean, this could be the thing that prevents Shape of Water from tying for the most nominations of all time if it misses here. What do you have in fifth place, Riley?
I've got Okja.
Okay.
Which I actually have in fourth because, yeah, there's some concern apparently about Star Wars not wowing in the Bake Off, since it's kind of, more of the same as what they're always doing.
Well, yeah, and usually when there's a Best Picture nominee in the category visual effects, with the exception of 2 years ago where there were three and they all pretty much canceled each other out, I mean, the Best Picture nominee usually tends to stand out, as we saw with Hugo winning over Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Right, and the other Planet of the Apes movie lost to...
Interstellar.
Yeah, Interstellar, yeah, which was not a Best Picture nominee, but I guess felt like one. Considering that it was from Christopher Nolan and it had 5 nominations as opposed to Dawn's 1. It's going to be so sad when the Planet of the Apes trilogy just does not win a single Oscar for visual effects in all 3 films. I see that it's number 1 in our odds right now, and I'm like, I kind of think it's going to lose to Dunkirk or maybe Blade Runner.
Yeah. Okay, what about, do you see War for the Planet of the Apes coming into either of the sound categories? It hasn't, come in for the previous ones, but I feel like this one in particular is getting a lot of buzz for it in those categories.
I currently have War for the Planet of the Apes getting into sound editing, not sound mixing, but yeah, that's one sound category I do have it getting in for.
Like, we do see franchises like The Hobbit where, they randomly come in and out of these categories. So just because it missed for the other ones doesn't mean that it's out this time.
Yeah.
And considering that this is the last one of this particular trilogy, who knows what the future holds? But maybe this is a time where they might choose to actually reward it.
I think it. Oh, go ahead, Tony.
No, but what I was going to say is what films do you have in both categories?
I have 4
splits anywhere.
I have 4 films in both categories for certain: Dunkirk, Blade Runner, Shape of Water, and Baby Driver. And then for the 5th slot in each one of them, I think honestly, you take your pick between Star Wars or War for the Planet of the Apes or Wonder Woman. Sound mixing is interesting because, Greatest Showman can certainly show up there. Same thing with Beauty and the Beast. They love to nominate musicals in this category. I'm also kind of wondering about Get Out getting nominated for sound mixing, because we often see that weird sound mixing nomination for a Best Picture nominee that they really, really like, and that they want to, at least the sound branch is going to throw their votes behind. So if there's
like with Birdman a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. So if there's going to be a split there, I think I could see Get Out getting into sound mixing, and either Planet of the Apes or Star Wars or Wonder Woman getting in. Star Wars is the one in all these tech categories that I'm looking at, and I'm thinking it might not get nominated for anything. I think that the buzz on it is just kind of, it's not that it's a worse movie than The Force Awakens. It's just that it's not as talked about because, it's just not as much in the conversation, I feel. Certainly not for awards.
Oh, yeah, because it is still like the biggest movie of last year.
Right.
And currently this year.
True.
I feel like Star Wars turned a little too when they had Rogue One, which wasn't taken as seriously for awards, and then once that was out, then I feel like it kind of gave all the other branches, an out to say like we don't have to nominate this like every single year. Kind of a weird comparison to make, but I feel like the same thing happened in the animated field, where for years they were nominating the most acclaimed Pixar movie every single year for Best Picture and Best Screenplay and all that kind of stuff. And then, then we had a little bit of a lull, and then Frozen came and kind of made it all look very commercial. And then now when they produce something like Inside Out, then it's just not even considered because they're past that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think in the case of Star Wars, too, is that, we've had one every single year since The Force Awakens. And so it's easy for it to feel oversaturated. You know what I mean? Like Planet of the Apes has been an every 3 years type thing. And so it's like, oh, yes, let's nominate this for visual effects again, because we forgot how impressive this work is. And it's even more impressive this go round. But Star Wars, because we are getting one every single year, and there's not really that much.
And sometimes 2 a year.
Yeah, and there's not that much different and exciting and new in these each year. It's not like in Rogue One, there was at least that, we brought Peter Cushing back from the dead.
And resurrected a young Carrie Fisher.
Right. Yeah. It's and this one, it kind of feels like more of the same, honestly. I will say that, I mean, the sound team behind this, what makes me think it can still get in for sound mixing or sound editing is that, it's Ren Kleiss, who is David Fincher's go-to guy, and also Matthew Wood, who's won multiple Oscars. The one to watch out for is the latest Transformers movie, because that's from Greg P. Russell, who is, now that Kevin O'Connell won his Oscar, Greg P. Russell is the most nominated person to never win, even though he just got a nomination rescinded last year for 13 Hours. So let's hope he's not violating campaign rules this year.
Transformers, that's another one that kind of comes and goes in these categories as well.
Yeah, like Age of Extinction received no nominations at all.
Yeah. I've got Star Wars in third for both, but yeah, I think I'm going to have to move it down. I don't have The Shape of Water in sound editing because I feel like that movie is being overestimated in general, like how it didn't show up in SAG Ensemble. I've got Logan in sound editing just because I want to throw that movie a bone somewhere, since I don't have it in screenplay, even though it hit, WGA.
Well, except they love comic book movies more than the writers' branch of the Academy.
Yeah, that's true. Sound mixing is one of those categories where it definitely helps if you're a Best Picture nominee or winner. Not at the Oscars, but my favorite one was where BAFTA nominated The Artist for Best Sound, which was a movie without sound.
Which was a silent film.
Yes.
Yeah.
In sound mixing, we should also look out for The Post, because, I mean, that guy is a 12-time Oscar winner, I think, or 7-time Oscar winner and 12-time nominee or something like that. So
You mean Andy Nelson?
Yes, that's his name. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
Lincoln
he
is a
wrote-
good example. Like, there's a movie that's not, there's not a lot of gunfire or aliens or anything, but still got a sound mixing nomination.
Well, yeah, and he's only won twice for Saving Private Ryan and.
No, wait, I'm talking about Gary Rydstrom. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Andy Nelson's only won twice so far.
Yeah, I'm talking about Gary Rydstrom.
Right, who's the other?
Yeah,
Only twice.
okay. So yes, I'm looking. Gary Rydstrom is a 7-time nominee, a 7-time winner, and
Yeah.
so yeah, it's hard to hear on these things, and you're.
I understand.
Okay. Another one is Wonder Woman. You could see that one.
Mhm.
I guess I don't really like Marvel in this category as much, but
Yeah, ironically, I think DC movies seem to have a better history with Suicide Squad winning and winning for makeup at least.
And the
As
Dark Knight
Marvel.
receiving tons of nominations, with the exception of Best Picture.
Right.
all right. I'm going to defer to you guys for the song category because I've not really listened to these nominees or contenders. But who do you have, Jeffrey?
Okay, I currently have Remember Me, which is from Coco, which is by the Lopez's, previous winners for Let It Go from Frozen. I have last year's winners, Pasek and Paul, returning this year for This Is Me from The Greatest Showman, which they recently won the Golden Globe for. I have Mighty River from Mudbound getting in, of course, the Mary J. Blige factor. And I have Common, a previous winner for Selma, and a multiple nominee, but still always the bridesmaid ever, the bride, Diane Warren, getting in for Stand Up for Something from Marshall. Although I do think Diane Warren might also be a possibility for that song from Crisis from Syria. And fifth place, I have getting in, even though it did not get in at the Globes, nor even at the Grammys, since it was part of this year's eligibility, is Evermore from Beauty and the Beast, given that, it's by 8-time winner Alan Menken and 3-time winner Tim Rice.
Okay, and Zach?
Well, I think I've got about the same. I mean, it's, Remember Me from Coco, and This Is Me from The Greatest Showman, Evermore from Beauty and the Beast, Stand Up for Something from Marshall, and the one that I'm sort of on the fence about is The Mystery of Love from Call Me By Your Name. I could see that if that movie is going to underperform, I think that's a place where it could miss. Also, I mean, there's 2 songs in that movie, and Visions of Gideon, I think, is a better song.
Kevin Jacobson thought the same way.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could see it getting votes pulled from that one. And I mean, also that song just kind of, it's weird that Mysteries of Love is the one that's being singled out, since Visions of Gideon is the one that plays over the last shot of the movie, and I think is the one
It's
that
just
people.
a title.
Yeah. I mean, so I could see that getting votes pulled away, and maybe 50 Shades Darker gets an Oscar nomination. So.
Yeah, just like 50 Shades of Grey.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, this is a tough one because, you never know when Alone Yet Not Alone is going to show up.
And then disappear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or, I was scrolling. I was like, where's J. Ralph?
I was thinking the same thing today. I was like, what is he? Like,
it's funny, on the Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool trailer, it says, Annette Bening, Jamie Bell, Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Doesn't say who wrote or directed it, but then it says score by J. Ralph. So he's a big deal. I've got Mighty River, just because I feel bad about not having Mary J. Blige in my supporting actress predictions.
Ooh. Shame.
Well, I have her getting in supporting actress, so I have her getting in twice.
Yeah, I think Mighty River is probably, if I was going to switch out Call Me By Your Name with something else, I'd put in Mighty River. But again, Netflix.
So does everybody have the Beauty and the Beast song getting in?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Yeah, apparently.
Apparently there's another one, though, too. How Does a Moment Last Forever? So.
Well,
And if that were nominated, it would get Celine Dion probably back on the Oscar stage to perform it like she did with the original.
color me surprised. I didn't even remember that there were songs in there other than the ones that were in the 1991 movie.
Well, yeah, that's partially why I think Evermore. Another reason why I think Evermore is vulnerable, because there were some people who thought the song, that were divided, thought it was a great addition. Some thought it felt a little forced.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but at the same token, a lot of people thought the same thing about the I think it was called "Suddenly" from Les Miserables that they added.
Yeah.
That got nominated.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, I thought it was a nice addition, but of course, that's another conversation for another time.
All right, two that I'll add to the conversation, going off the J. Ralph thing, is Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool does have a song by Elvis Costello called You Shouldn't Look at Me That Way. Maybe J. Ralph was, lurking, doing some kind of, I don't really know how songs work, but doing something there. And then also we've got Tell Me How Long from Chasing Coral, which is an ocean documentary. Not with J. Ralph, but, maybe they're just in that mood these days, just where are the ocean documentaries, what songs do they have? And it's performed by Kristen Bell, who had Frozen a few years ago.
I wonder if this could also be the one place that Detroit gets an Oscar nomination, because there is a song in there called It Ain't Fair by Questlove. I mean, that could be a out of left field type thing.
Or maybe If I Dare from Battle of the Sexes, given that, it's written by Nicholas Britell, who was a nominee last year for his score for Moonlight, and Sarah Bareilles, who, of course, performed during the In Memoriam segment last year.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so our last category is Best Original Score. I've got The Shape of Water, Dunkirk, Phantom Thread, and then I've got The Post because of John Williams, and I've got Victoria and Abdul because Thomas Newman gets nominated for Passengers. He gets nominated for Saving Mr. Banks every time. And what do you have, Zach?
I actually have the same 5. Although I would look out for, there's a few that can get in there. Darkest Hour, I think, could get in. Also, 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri. Carter Burwell finally broke through in the Oscar race 2 years ago for Carol, so it's okay to nominate him now and predict him. John Williams could be a double nominee if they just default and give him another one for The Last Jedi.
Yeah, he's been a double nominee several times before, last time being in 2011 for The Adventures of Tintin and Warhorse.
Right, yeah. Also, I think Coco is a possibility here. And I wonder if, because it has shown up at a couple of places, if maybe they could go for Blade Runner 2049. Maybe Hans Zimmer could be the double nominee this year.
And the other nomination, he shared a writing credit with Benjamin Wallfish.
Correct, yeah.
How about you, Jeffrey? What do you have for your 5?
Well, I have Dunkirk, Shape of Water, Phantom Thread, Last Jedi, and The Post. So I do have John Williams earning 2 nominations.
All right, and Tony.
I actually have mine for this one. I have Phantom Thread, Shape of Water, Dunkirk, Darkest Hour, and Coco.
All right, fair. What about for the win? Is Alexander Desplat, is he just going to steamroll this whole season, or does Hans Zimmer still have a chance, or Johnny Greenwood?
Well, Johnny Greenwood's just got to be thankful to get nominated finally.
Finally, yeah.
Nothing else, yeah. Which, I mean, might not even happen this year again, so just get ready for that. I think that Desplat is in a good position to win his 2nd Oscar for this. I think it's a good place to reward The Shape of Water. And I think that it's a very Academy-friendly score. It's a beautiful score. It's very lilting and melodic and romantic and fantastical. So, I mean, I think it's a very memorable aspect of that movie.
And it stands out. It stands out a lot because so much of the movie takes place in silence, particularly in the scenes between Sally Hawkins and the creature. So you notice that in ways that it can be both subtle and really stand out at the same time.
I will say, though, I mean, with what Hans Zimmer did this year with Dunkirk is really extraordinary, the way that it blends with the sound design of the movie. And I mean, it's not your typical kind of World War II score. I mean, it's incredibly distinctive, and I think it's some of the best work that he's done in a very long time. So I wouldn't count him out completely, especially if, I don't know, by some miracle, Dunkirk suddenly becomes a tech juggernaut and they just start voting for it and everything.
It could too.
Yeah.
All right, so we will be back to discuss the remaining categories that are not director, acting, and also not below the line.
Yeah.